So tell me a little bit about, obviously you edit in Premiere Pro, but what other tools do you use as part of your post process? Are you coloring in Premiere? Are you using third-party tools? What are some of those other tools that you can't live without?
Yeah, so I mean, my process for most of my projects is I'll throw it in Adobe Premiere. We're editing off a GTech drive, so usually they're about 144 terabyte drives, so they're bendy, but they're RAID drives, so they work like lightning fast. And throw them in Adobe Premiere, and then I'll spend however long that project needs to edit it. After I have it done edited, I'll do a little bit of the sound design, but then I'll actually send it to a guy in the UK that I've never met. I've been doing this for the last 7, 8 years with this guy. His name's Dan. He's amazing, Dan Pugsley. He'll do all the sound design for me. And then after that, I used to do all the coloring myself in Premiere with Lumetri, but I'm not like a pro colorist. I'm not going to pretend to do that. So then I'll call another friend who uses DaVinci Resolve, and he'll color in DaVinci Resolve, and then he'll throw it right back into Premiere. And then after that, I'll take the colored files, and I'll send them to another guy in San Francisco that I've never met, that he does all our visual effects, Taylor Cadell, shout out to him. So he's doing that. So it's like everything's in Premiere, and then I'm just sending it off to different people, VFX, sound, music. And then like the guy that does my music, I'll send it to him. He's actually based in Utah. He's the only guy based in the same state as me. He'll compose the music and send that back to me. And then my sound mixer will kind of mix it all together. So there's a lot of people that are kind of stemming off and doing their own things other side of the world, and then they send it back, and then I essentially just compile it all together again.
So with all of the team members, some of which are in the same state as you, some of which you've never met before, what's your collaboration process? Are you guys slacking each other during the day? Are you getting on Zoom calls? What does that structure look like for providing that loop of feedback?
A lot of emails and a lot of phone conversation. So my guy in the UK, because we can't really call, so we're sending 4 or 5 emails a day, and we also have to like take into account that he's in England, so we also have the time difference. Like he's like, hey, Devin, you'll be done at 4 a.m., but I'll be ready at this time. So it's like different things like that. My guy in San Francisco, our visual effects guy, like we're talking 4 or 5 times a day on the phone when we got a project going on, which has been the last 2 months. He's been working like crazy hours because we have so many projects based on like heavy visual effects. But we've never met in person. I just posted on Instagram saying, hey, I need some awesome visual effects artists that can work within our budgets. And this guy was one of the few people that someone tagged him. And then we connected that way. And he's been doing all our visual effects for the last 4 or 5 years. So it's just using social media to connect the dots. Like same thing with our music is I just did social media posts. Someone with a friend of a friend said, you should use this guy. And then that's who I use now for all my music. So a lot of people I've never met, but they're doing like all these huge projects with us. So it's been really fun, exciting, kind of seeing people from all around the world working together.
I absolutely love that. Social media, bringing the world together.
No,
To
no
create
doubt.
content. So I've got to ask, with the complexity of some of these particular projects, with a lot of the folks being remote, sometimes even in different countries, what are some of the most challenging parts of production for you today? What's your favorite part of production? I feel like, the challenge might tend to vary based on the specific project, but in general, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing today?
I think it's just budgeting time because we have 5 projects at once, and all those projects, the brands want them released the same week. And you just can't do that. We just don't have the bandwidth. Even if we had a team of 30, I still don't think we could meet that demand. So even the one we have now, there is 2 projects that have to be released the same week, and they're both heavy on VFX. So we had to outsource another visual effects team. I want to say an LA base. So they took that on while someone else is in San Francisco taking that on. So it's just delegating and knowing the right people to delegate. So that's been a little stressful. It's just when we're working with a lot of brands, and they all want it done at the same time. We do work with a lot of people from international. Like I'd say most of the people we work with are not Utah based. Maybe 5% of any work we get is Utah based, like where we're based out of. It's all international or outside of our own state. So it's just always like time differences is knowing like, okay, this is where they're at. And most of our clients right now that we're working with, they're all Chinese based as well. So there's also that language barrier as well, which I mean, we're all for it, but there's always like a translator, and there's sometimes miscommunication of like, this was meant, but this was actually meant. So that can get a little confusing. For me, though, I really do love the process of just like really talented people doing their best at something. And like when I put the pieces together, it's like a puzzle where you put them all together, like the sound, music, and just seeing that come together. That's what gets me really excited. And I love production as well. And I always get like super depressed. My wife will say it like after a shoot, I come home so sad. Like I'm super happy to see you guys, but like you pour like a month of energy into something and then you wrap and then everyone just goes their own ways and does their own thing. So I always have like that low just because I love production on set, just that atmosphere of so many people coming together to make something happen.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why a lot of folks are attracted to film school in the first place, right? It's that sense of community and team. And yes, it's long hours and everyone is exhausted at the end of it, but seeing something come together, I think, is the most rewarding possible outcome that you could ever
Yep.
imagine from all that hard work. So that's awesome. So I would love if you would be so kind to check out what you've been working on. I know that
Yep.
I believe this project is unreleased, right?
This is unreleased, guys, so you're getting a sneak peek never before seen. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a little screen share for you guys. Is that working for you guys?
Yeah.
So
And
this is my Adobe Premiere, and this one's really interesting. So it's based on a video game. It's very anime style video game. So I was going for like really colorful. So you can see like on my timeline, it's not like a crazy timeline by any means. But let me just show you guys. So I'll have everything edited, and then we'll send it off and have it get colored. So a lot of the stuff you're seeing now is stuff that's already been colored. And all this stuff was shot originally in 8K as well. Like the prop that you guys saw earlier from behind me, like that's all this stuff. But when we did this project, I had the guy that I had doing all the stunt choreography. He's the guy holding the spear right over here. But he did all the choreography and he knows stunt fighting way better than me. So I actually had him do the first pass of edit. So he's in LA. I gave him the footage. He edited all the fight choreography. And I'll just to show you guys some of that kind of the vibes of what's like going on visually. And I know it's a little bit of a slowdown because we're streaming, but there's a lot of like heavy fight choreography, a lot of VFX that you guys are seeing. This is once again me sending to a lot of people and a lot of people doing a lot of different work on it. And but I had him do the first pass, so a lot of the cuts and stuff you're seeing, he did, and then he sent me the project, and then I fine-tuned it, and I did more of the story beats, but a lot of like the fight choreography. And I'll show you guys like a solid example of what I'm talking about. Like when I say kind of crazy fight choreography, wait for it, right here's a good example. But lots of VFX. My guy in San Francisco did all these VFX. But he's going through and picking out the best takes just because it features him and he knows stunt choreography way better. So for me, once again, it's just trusting the right people to tell a story the right way. So when I send off a clip, and this is a good example, I'll just kind of show you guys what it looks like now. And once again, just be mindful that there is a little bit of a slowdown. And just to kind of show you guys a little bit of scale of what this looks like is, this is what it looks like now. This is still final. But before that, there was no glow on the source, so the guy added that. And then before that, now you see the cable. So you guys are kind of getting like an inside look of what that process looks like. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut this. Oh, that makes everything disappear. Ta-da. But just to show you guys, like the process is not just one clip and it's done. I got to send it off. It gets colored. Then it got right after that, the VFX. And then I'll say, oh, tweak this, get rid of the wire, add a glow to it. So there's just so much every time. It's just multiple clips. But I wanted it to feel like an anime style movie. So you guys can see kind of like the vibes of how everything's moving and shifting and this and that. So a lot of the stuff that I use when I'm using Adobe Premiere, and that was pretty like extreme, right? But I'm gonna go ahead and just delete this layer just so you guys can get an idea of what it was looking like originally. Give it a second. So all that camera shake, we just had it on a tripod. And you're seeing the camera zooming in. So I'm using a ton of keyframes. This is how it looked after we put in After Effects. So we actually did this in After Effects, what you guys are seeing as far as like a lot of the VFX. The camera shake we did in After Effects, but there's no zoom or anything. It's just this wide shot. So then after our VFX guy went through this, I took that clip, and then there's so many different layers going on. And then you can see right up here, I'm just going to kind of zoom in. You can see all the different keyframes, and all these keyframes, they're just representing when I'm having the camera zooming in, zooming out. I know it's going to go a little bit slower, and keep in mind we're dealing with 6K and 8K footage while streaming. But just to kind of show you, like keyframing is a huge thing that we do, especially on projects like this where we're having the camera really zoom in and out and kind of punch all over the place. But that just makes everything feel really popping. But zooming, keyframing is huge that I use. Another thing I use a lot of the times is warp stabilizer. I'm going to actually kind of shift gears for a minute. So as I was saying earlier, we'll take our stock footage. So I did a trip with my family. We went to the Grand Tetons. This was last year when the world was slowly starting to open up. And so I was like, hey, we're here with the family. I brought my red camera anyways. Why don't I also shoot some fun stock footage while we're at it? So I got all these different shots of just like pretty areas. It was also fall time as well, so almost a year from now. So like I already had this warped, but you can see the shot. It's not like awful as far as not too shaky anyways, but any shot where I want it to be as smooth as possible, I'll take that shot. And I'm using a red Monstro camera for this shot. And then I have a glide cam hand stabilizer. And then I'll add warp to most of the shots that I want really stable. And then that just makes it a little bit more smoother, or a lot smoother. And then I'll take these shots and then I'll send them to Adobe stock, and then they'll go up on sale, and then we'll make money on the side. So it's like I'm already here with my family. I'm already filming. So I have all these really beautiful locations, and I'm here also taking photographs. So I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna set up the camera, and you'll see a lot of these shots, they play out like some of them 5 to 10 minutes, which is way longer than Adobe stock needs. But I'm also taking this footage, and then I have another YouTube channel that I just started when COVID started called Visual Escape, and all it is relaxing videos. So I'm also taking this footage and repurposing it. So it's trying to get the best bang for your buck. But that channel we started during COVID, it has roughly 50,000 subscribers. And it was just like going out with my family. That's my wife and my son right there a year ago. And I'm capturing like priceless moments, but I'm also getting great stock footage. We're also getting great footage for our other YouTube channel. So it's essentially like double dipping 3, 4, 5 times, trying to get everything we can out of the experience, while also just like we're going out there to film, but also just to be there as like a family as well. So, I mean, just kind of show you guys how we're like using Premiere, using footage we've already shot for other things and using it for many different reasons. So that was a lot of information at once. So hopefully that wasn't like over the head, but I mean, this is just a huge part of what we do is repurposing things, but also just creating cool content that we can put out there and have it ideally stand the test of time. So there you go.
With all of the different streams that you have going on, and with all of the complex timelines you're working with, how do you keep all of your content properly managed? I know you've got large drives at your office there, but do you have any special tips and tricks around overall like media management, workflow organization? Because with the volume of content that you are shooting, I know you've got to own stock and hard drives at this point, I'm sure. So
you'd think so, yeah. So when I started my career, because I know you don't have a budget and you're just working with what you had, I was just using littler drives, or actually bigger drives at the time, 10 years ago. And I was like poor college student, and then one of my roommates bumped one of the hard drives. It was a big project, and it hit the floor, and it busted. So after that, and I couldn't recover, I didn't have enough money to like send it into data recovery. So I learned that you have to have a backup no matter how much money you don't have. So everything we do, we always have it backed up 99.9% of the time. So now what we use is G-Tech drives, or 144 terabyte drives. So those are way more expensive. We're talking like 10K. So I know that's normally not like an option for like a poor college struggling student, or for a lot of people. But for us, because we're working with bigger companies, we have to have everything backed up multiple places. But I own, I would say roughly 20 144 terabyte drives. And everything of that is backed up. And like, let me just grab one really fast. Sorry, I'm going MIA for a second. But they're drives just like this. And if you look back to my side, you see about 10 of these lined up over there. You see 10 of them lined up at my house, and a bunch more kind of all over the place. So that's how we do it. But storage, it's like that's where a lot of the money that we make on projects, it goes right back into production with more cameras, higher end stuff, and then it goes into hard drives. So those are like the two things I don't skimp on if I can avoid it.
Yeah, it's one of the taxes, I guess, of shooting in 8K, right?
Yes, it definitely does feel a lot more space. But the way I look at it is like not too long ago, we did a licensing deal with another television company where we made a lot of money from that. So it's like, or we have our stuff with Adobe stock where it's like, we don't have to shoot it, but I'm there. It's good memories and I can repurpose it. So it's worth paying that extra money because it will pay itself out. It's all long-term investment. If I'm just thinking for the next 2 months, it's probably not worth it. But if I'm speaking for the next 2 or 3 years, it's definitely worth it.
So on that note, if we start getting into some of the more philosophical questions of what are some of the things that you wish you had known going into this when you had just started creating videos and started building all of your brand content? Are there any special words of advice that you wish you had before you got started?
I think the biggest thing I would say is don't get depressed and just keep on doing what you love to do. Because even now, and a lot of people are like, you've made it. Like we have 6 million subscribers on YouTube, but every week I'm fighting to make it again. So it's a constantly up and down. Like we'll release a video. Like a good example is I went to Uzbekistan last December. I shot 4 videos because I want to get the best bang for my buck. And one of them was the Sonic the Hedgehog video that we watched at the beginning. And that one was like a last minute thought where there was no energy put into that. But that was a video that blew up out of all the videos. So it's like, try different things. Things will do well, things won't do well. But as long as you're doing what you love to do, you don't feel as bad. So it's like, am I doing this for my audience or for me? And sometimes people are like, well, Devin, this video got hardly any views. And I'm like, well, I'm okay with that because I'm really proud of that video. And that video has actually created bigger opportunities for me because people take me more serious because of it. So I would say that's a huge thing. Is just know that it's going to be a roller coaster of a lot of up and downs. And it's constantly changing as far as like social media. So you kind of have to give and take with, okay, I'll go vertical this time, but I don't always have to go vertical. I have YouTube and other platforms where I can do more of what I want to do. So I think those are the big things. And just connections, I think, is huge. Like my success has happened because I've connected with extremely talented people that we've all risen together. Like one of the guys that composes all my music, he's also composing on a huge like video game for Warner Brothers right now. Like seeing these people, they're doing stuff with me, but they're also doing much bigger things with much bigger companies. So it's just cool seeing us all growing together. So it's like, and a lot of times I know like starting off, I know a lot of people on here are just starting off, like you don't have the budget. So like when I was starting off as a college kid, I didn't have the money to hire a composer. So I reached out to other music composers that were going to my same school and said, hey, Steven Anderson's a good example. He composed all my videos for the first 3 or 4 years. I'm like, hey, Steven, I don't got any money, but I'd love for you to compose music because I love your stuff. And let's just see what happens. And he composed that. And then he started making a lot of money on iTunes on the side because people would see that video and then they'd buy those songs on iTunes. And then he got bigger opportunities from it. So it's just growing and rising together and just knowing that it is a collaborative process of everyone kind of building each other up.
So I think one of the main themes of this entire conversation today is really just taking advantage of every opportunity. You've done an amazing job of creating all of these different additional sources of possible opportunity and revenue streams. So I'm curious, when you start thinking about kind of the whole idea of the creator economy, what sort of things are you thinking about on the back end? Are you thinking about views? Are you thinking about how to reach new audiences? Are you thinking about how to engage with new brands that you haven't worked with before? How do you prioritize some of this around this new creator economy we're living
Yes.
in?
It's definitely a love-hate relationship because when I just focus, because the reality is I get hired because of views. But that's also where I feel depression comes in because if I put out something and it doesn't get views, then I also feel really discouraged. So it's just like love-hate relationship. So that's why I was like, it's so important to create stuff you're really passionate about as well. Because if it doesn't do well, you're still going to be like, okay, and not feel down. But it definitely is like, I'm not sure the exact answer of what's the priority, but I will say the more views something gets, usually the bigger opportunity happens. And the more views and the quality of that content, the bigger the opportunity will happen as well. And for me, I feel it's so important that just do the best you can with the resources you have because opportunities will happen from that. Assassin's Creed, when they saw my first video I did, it was just a fan film. Then they hired me to do like 10 other videos for all these other video games that they had. These companies we're working with right now, Lord of the Rings mobile app game, not the Amazon series, but they saw some of our content. They hired us to do 1, then they hired us to do part 2 and part 3. Same thing with Stay Survival, big mobile app zombie game. We did that for them at the end of last year. They loved it. So then they hired us to do part 2, which came out a couple months ago. And then they hired us to do part 3 that comes out in 7 days from now. So it's just like do your best to represent them and then bigger opportunities will happen. And because they love those, then they hired me after Stay Survival to do one for another mobile app game called King of Avalon. So for me, it's just do everything you can to make it awesome. Don't look at it as a job, as a paycheck, but give it your all and they will see that and other opportunities usually will come out of it.